This is Orange Nation Overtime with Stephen Fonte and Paulie Sibilia.
Welcome into Orange Nation Overtime alongside Paulie Sibilia. I'm Stephen Fonte. Game night here in Syracuse, a very important game at that. Syracuse playing host to Tennessee inside the Dome. The Orange desperately, Paulie, needs this to improve its non-conference resume. Really last chance at a quality non-conference win. If they don't win tonight, we were talking about this earlier today on the Orange Nation radio show, they probably can't really improve their resume all that much for the next 2 months, given what the schedule looks like. This is a really big one.
Yeah, you got to win this game, and I don't know if it's possible or not. Are they good enough? They've shown flashes, halves, as you would say. You got to put a full game together, and you got to play hard for 40 minutes. And it's just, there's no easier route to getting to the tournament than by beating Tennessee. You've wasted every other opportunity you had in the preseason.
Yeah, and that's why that Houston game, I think, is going to haunt them the rest of the way, because you said you got to go out and you got to play, a full 40 minutes. They played a full 45 minutes against Houston, and they were right there. It really came down to a possession. They didn't score on that last play at the end of regulation, went into overtime. Houston made some big shots. Manuel Sharp, in particular, made those 2 big shots in overtime, and they squandered that opportunity. And then it was tough to turn around the next day against Kansas, and we all saw what happened against Iowa State. And that one really bad half of basketball against Iowa State has hurt their net ranking. It's put them in a situation now where they got to do something to make up for it. And, beating Tennessee, everything would be fine. You talk about being behind the 8 ball. They're behind the 8 ball right now. You beat Tennessee.
You're on the 8 ball.
Yeah, I think you feel okay about where you are. And you're going to get Donnie Freeman back. That's what we assume. That's everything that we are led to believe is that Donnie Freeman will be coming back at some point. Not going to play tonight, but if you win this one, you buy yourself some time because the schedule eases up a little bit, and it doesn't really get difficult again until the month of February.
Duke will be daunting.
Yeah,
but if you can beat Tennessee and you hung close with Houston, it doesn't make North Carolina seem as hard. It doesn't make Virginia seem as hard. Those seem winnable. Without beating Tennessee, the fan base is probably thinking you can't win those games.
Yeah, and forget about the fan base. I mean, just from a X's and O's standpoint and just a factual standpoint, it's going to be an uphill battle to make the NCAA tournament. Just, looking at the net ranking, they're 90th right now. As we know, the first net ranking came out, and they opened at 90th. And I would imagine that, the 31-point loss to Iowa State has a lot to say about that, right? If you could beat Tennessee, and Tennessee's in the top 20 of all the metrics, KenPom, net ranking, they're number 11 in the net ranking, 12th in KenPom, 13th in the AP and Coaches Poll. This would be we talk about how Duke counts as 2 wins. I don't know if Tennessee counts as 2 wins. They may at the end of the day. I mean, this is a really good team that they're playing. And, if you can win this one, it does buy you a little time to get healthier and to potentially improve upon that resume in the month of February. But if you lose it and you're 0-4, in this big stretch, I know Donnie wasn't there, but you got to win games at some point, and it would be an uphill battle once you get to the conference schedule.
Yeah, I am not envious of anybody that's part of the coaching staff right now. You've got to, your back's against the wall right now.
Yeah, and this is a Tennessee team that went out to Vegas. They did beat Houston 76-73 in a game that was nip and tuck. They made some shots down the stretch. They beat Houston, and then they lost the following day to Kansas, the third game there, 81-76, after holding a lead for much of that game, and then Kansas came back late, pulled ahead, and then was able to pull it out. Prior to that loss to Kansas, Rick Barnes had they had won 40 straight games as a ranked team against an unranked non-conference opponent. Now, Kansas is back in the poll, so that's kind of, that streak ended on a technicality. The Vols are also 79-8 against unranked non-conference opponents under Rick Barnes. I don't know that he gets enough credit, and we actually talked with Sam Rothman from our Next Star affiliate in Knoxville, Tennessee, about this on the show today. I'm not sure he gets enough credit as being among the best coaches in the business.
Yeah, he's been around a long time.
Yeah,
he's won everywhere.
Yeah, he has, and he's got this team playing really good basketball.
2003 was on the court in the Final Four against Syracuse.
That's right. That's right. He has been around a long time. He's been a lot of different places. He's won everywhere he's been, as you mentioned. And he's got a lot of talent on this team. They do it a little bit differently than they've done in past years. But they've got Nate Ament, who is considered one of the top prospects in the 2026 draft. They've got Jacoby Gillespie, a transfer out of Maryland. They've got some key pieces on this team that this is a good defensive team, but they can also score the basketball. It's going to be quite a challenge tonight for Syracuse. So with that in mind, let's hear from Sam Rothman now. Sam, full disclosure, I taught Sam when she was a student at Syracuse University.
Does that make you feel old?
It does. Yeah, not so much her as much as, when I talk about, former students who used to intern for me back in the day who have been in the business themselves 10 plus years. I mean, she hasn't been in the business 10 plus years, but she does a great job covering Tennessee for her station down there in Knoxville. We had her on prior to the Syracuse-Tennessee football game. We had her on again today to talk Syracuse basketball, and we asked her, listen, this is the third straight year that Syracuse and Tennessee have met on the basketball court, and I opened her up by asking about how this particular team compares to the other two that Syracuse have faced in recent years.
Yeah, this one's very different in terms of it's a young team, a lot of new faces, 4 new starters on this team, but the recipe for success is there. What Rick Barnes has been so successful in the portal 2 years ago, Dalton Connect. Last year was Chaz Lanier. This year it's Jacoby Gillespie, and they really just have not missed a beat. Now, the big difference is that Jacoby Gillespie, different from Lanier and maybe Connect in that he's also Tennessee's point guard. So that's not usually the Rick Barnes formula of the sharpshooter being the point guard as well, but the fact that he is the leading scorer on the team also being a point guard, maybe even more impressive, right? But he's really been, Nate Ament gets all the spotlight as he should, the 5-star could be a high draft pick, right? He has been SEC Freshman of the Week 3 out of the first 4 weeks of the season. He's coming into his groove, but Jacoby Gillespie is the guy that Syracuse will have to lock down tonight from a scoring perspective, and something that's a little different from last year's team. And also just going back to, obviously Tennessee got knocked out of the Elite Eight last year by a Houston team. This year, Tennessee beat Houston in that same Vegas tournament, and Coach Barnes said that, maybe last year's team wouldn't have beaten Houston, but then they turned around and lost to Kansas. And he said last year's team wouldn't have done that from a mindset focus, and that's because they lost the Zakai Zieglers, they lost the Jemai Mashaks, they lost those vital leadership roles. So it is a bit of an interesting team in terms of those veteran presence aren't there, but maybe they are more talented in terms of, especially with the bigs inside, the depth is there, unlike I've seen since I've been here. So a lot of talent. The difference is that veteran leadership, though.
Yeah, and along those lines, Sam, I wanted to ask you about that Vegas trip because, Tennessee, like most, they scheduled some lesser competition early on in the year. They beat up on the lesser competition. Then they went out to Vegas for this big tournament, just like Syracuse did. Mm-hmm. And we were all like, all right, we're going to learn about this Syracuse team. Mm-hmm. What did you learn about this Tennessee team? Maybe not so much from the Rutgers game. They were better than Rutgers, but Houston and Kansas in particular. What did you learn about this team from those two games?
Yeah, from that Houston game, you definitely learned, to my previous point about those bigs. You have Felix Okpara, he's the only returning starter on the team, but then you also throw in a Jalen Carey in there. You throw in JP Estrella, who missed all of last season due to an injury. You also have Cade Phillips off the bench. You have Dwayne Brown. I mean, they're just endless inside, and talking to, some of those lesser competition teams that Tennessee has played, all of the coaches talk about how you can't stop them inside. There's just too much depth. One guy comes out and there's another, big guy coming in. So that you kind of learned, because you can't learn that as much against the lesser competition, like you said. But when you're going up against Houston with that kind of defense and you're doing that, that's a big takeaway. But then to turn around, and maybe it was fatigue, maybe it was, coming off a big win against Houston, but they looked kind of flat against Kansas. And that's something that maybe we learned is, okay, this team is missing that veteran leadership, those leaders saying, guys, pick it up. Like, this is not a gimme game either. Like Kansas, they may be unranked, but they're a really good team, So that is something that I wouldn't be shocked if Rick Barnes, he's known, to be on his players. He was on his players. We were at practice yesterday to kind of flip the page, and I wouldn't be shocked if they came out with a dominant performance against Syracuse.
Sam, you mentioned the name Nate Ament a little bit ago. What have your impressions been of him? I mean, is he top 5 NBA draft good from what you've seen? Because there's always a transition, right? But has he made that transition look seamless?
Yeah, I mean, I can't say specifically in terms of how he competes to maybe those other guys that are in the mix for that, but I've been really impressed. There are some times, some plays that he makes, and you kind of just are like, wow, you kind of are in shock because he's a freshman making these plays. He's 6'10", he's only going to grow. He's still growing, which is insane, and he's getting better every single game. And I think that's the big thing that Coach Barnes has really praised about him is these 5 stars, these guys that, you know, are going to be one and done, a top 5 pick. They come in, maybe they think that they know everything. You know, they've been the best player for basically their whole lives, right? But he has made it an emphasis also in Rick Barnes' system to get better on defense as well, and that's a huge thing in Barnes' system. And every single game he's gotten better. And he had a bad outing against Houston, 9 points, but then he comes out and scores 20 against Kansas. So just the resiliency, the able to bounce back. You know, if he has a bad shooting night, he's not afraid to keep shooting, even if they're not going in. And I think that's, you know, big for a freshman to be able to have that, you know, mentality.
Rick Barnes, you know, I mentioned this stat earlier in the show. The Vols are 79-8 against unranked non-conference opponents under Rick Barnes. Does he get the credit that he deserves in the national coaching circles? Because, again, when you look at some of these stats, you know, the loss to Kansas snapped a streak of 40 straight wins as a ranked team to unranked non-conference opponents. And, you know, Kansas obviously is back in the polls this week. But what he's been able to do consistently year in and year out, it is remarkable. And I feel like when we look at, you know, the best coaches in the game, you know, Rick Barnes is on the list, but maybe not necessarily, you know, towards the top of the list. Why is that?
I think it's because they say you can't win the big game. You know, he's still searching for that trip to the Final Four. That Dalton Connect year, it really felt like they had the team to go all the way. You know, obviously got matched up with a tough Purdue team and Zach Edey and all that. But I think the fact that he saw how they lost to Purdue, he saw how they lost to Houston, and he made an emphasis to get the bigs this year just shows he can evaluate as a coach and see where he needs to get better and where he needs to build his roster. But yeah, I mean, if you go to a Tennessee practice and you hear Rick Barnes, he is the sweetest man off the court. Hey, what's up? He knows what's going on in your lives, like you mentioned. And then he gets on the court and he is just reaming into his players. So from my perspective, yes, I mean, he is a legend, but maybe he doesn't get that respect because he hasn't had that big win or that big run in the postseason. Now, a lot of people think that this is the Tennessee team that could do it, again, because of that depth piece that they have this year.
That's what people said about Jim Boeheim for so long, and then that championship in 2003 certainly, that one championship changed everything in terms of how people look at you. We talked a lot about the positives, Sam, with this team and what they bring to the table. Are there any weaknesses that you have your eye on? You know, it's still early in the season, but if you had to point to a weakness or two with this Tennessee team, what would it be?
It would probably just be the turnovers. That's something that Tennessee is known for, that defense, that aggressive defense. But Tennessee's been turning the ball over a lot themselves, got better at it in Vegas. But it's still been something that Coach Barnes says he has not liked how his team has played in terms of just guarding the ball, making smart decisions, just playing smart. He says sometimes they just play dumb and he doesn't know what they're doing out there. So that's one maybe sign of weakness. But again, that is something, just talking about Rick Barnes' system, his defense, how he, gets on his players, that is something that has progressively gotten better. And I wouldn't be shocked if it continues to get better. But if that's one thing, maybe it would be the turnovers.
I don't know how much you've had a chance to watch Syracuse. Maybe you saw a little bit of what they did out there in Vegas. If so, I mean, what are your impressions of this Syracuse team from what you've seen?
I mean, yes, Syracuse went 0-3 in Vegas, but took Houston to overtime, right? A team that Tennessee had to fight to win, held their own against Kansas. I know you guys are losing your top scorer there, but I think this is an improved Syracuse team than maybe the ones that Tennessee has faced the past 2 years. Rick Barnes thinks so. He said that he was praising Coach Autry in practice yesterday in press conference, saying that this is the best Syracuse team he thinks the team will face, and he's seen that progression. And for a coach like Rick Barnes to say that, it's a big deal, right? So I think it might be Tennessee's toughest test. Also, Tennessee's up, they've got the jackets on. They're not used to the snow. They're not used to surroundings, playing in the dome. So it could be a tough test for the Vols tonight.
All right. In terms of a blueprint for success, for how this game plays itself out, give me a formula for how you go about beating this Tennessee team. If you're Syracuse, what needs to happen tonight for this to be, a close game with 5 minutes to play in the second half?
Yeah, you need Jacoby Gillespie to just get him off his rhythm. He has been playing the best of his time at Tennessee. Keep wanting to say Syracuse. The best of his time at Tennessee so far. Early on, you could see the flashes, but those numbers really weren't there. They've been there, especially in those Vegas games. So knock him off, and that gets the whole team out of rhythm, right? And then you just have to lock down the bigs. Easier said than done. That would be the formula for success. Not a lot of teams have been able to do it, especially that Houston defense. So if there's a formula for success, get Gillespie out of his rhythm, get him off, because once he's on, he can just kind of like Lanier and Connected the past 2 years. Once he's on, he just keeps firing away, and those threes just keep pouring down. And then I don't know how to do it, but trying to stop the bigs, because if Tennessee can just keep rotating them, it could be, a tough night for the Orange up there in Syracuse.
Yeah, first true road game for Tennessee this year, although they obviously just got back from Vegas themselves. Give me a prediction tonight. Tennessee's favored by, I think we saw 6.5. Seems about right. How do you see this game playing itself out tonight inside the Dome?
Oh, you're doing this to me as a Syracuse alum.
I know.
Let's say 71-58. Tennessee.
Oh, okay. All right. Yeah, well, we figured as much. We all have Tennessee winning as well, just by varying margins.
What are your guys' predictions?
I said Tennessee by 5.
Okay.
Paulie, you said...
I've said 3 different things. I can't.
He said Syracuse
will
is going to win. Right.
Syracuse will cover tonight. 6.5. Yeah, I think they'll cover.
Okay. That's the one you're sticking to?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. And then Tim Leonard, our producer, he thought Tennessee would cover the spread. So we shall see.
Okay.
I think we're all in agreement that Tennessee's probably going to win this game tonight. But Syracuse desperately needs it. So we'll see how it all plays out inside the Dome. 7 o'clock tip. Sam, it's always a pleasure catching up with you. I've told you this before. You're one of my favorite former students.
Thank you so much.
Keep up the good work. Keep killing it. And
have I asked you what Steve gave you as a grade?
I don't remember, but hopefully good.
I'm sure she got an A.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm sure
I can go back and look at it. But, when I talked to Steve back in Atlanta for the football game, I got a little nervous. I told him I feel like it's a test. So, so he makes me a little nervous. I feel like I'm going to be great.
I don't mean to make you nervous. No, you're killing it. Continued success to you, both personally and professionally.
Thank you so much.
Be well, Sam. Happy holidays, and we'll talk again soon.
You too. Looking forward to this one tonight. Have fun.
Again, that was Sam Rothman from WATE Channel 6 in Knoxville, Tennessee. Prediction time.
8?
What's that? Yes.
Like
those are the
That's
colors.
awesome.
WATE.
We
Channel
eating over
6.
here.
Yes.
All right.
Yes.
I like it.
Leave it to you to catch that, pick up on that. Prediction time. Who do you think wins tonight and why?
I sadly think Tennessee wins, but I think Syracuse gets the fan base's heart ripped out and they cover.
Yeah, somebody asked me earlier today what the keys to this game are tonight. I think the defense is going to be there. I think we saw them play with a high level of intensity on the defensive end against Houston. I think that's going to be apparent again tonight, especially given the fact that it feels like a do-or-die game, right? They're going to play with some desperation tonight. I think they will play with a lot of intensity and emotion. I think the defense is going to be there. Can they make enough shots to win this game? Can they shoot the ball well enough from the field? And maybe more importantly, can they shoot the ball well enough from the free throw line? Because that wasn't the case against Houston. As we know, they missed a ton of free throws against Houston. If this is a close game, can they make enough shots to beat Tennessee? I think that's what ultimately this game comes down to.
Yeah, I also think shot selection from some of the guys needs to be better. Also.
Yeah. I think we saw Cayenne press a little bit out in Vegas.
They are getting open shots. They're just not knocking them down, and it makes the offense look bad when you're missing bunnies. And, There's this common misperception that they don't run offense. They have been running offense. It just has not been run well against Power 4 teams.
And there's also this thought about, is this team good enough from three-point range? They're only shooting about 29% as a team right now, but you look at the guys who you would expect to be making threes, a la Nate Kings, he's less than 30%. Kyan Anthony, less than 30%. You would assume that both of those guys are going to pick it up. You're getting solid contributions from Tyler Betsy. He's 35%. JJ's in the high 30 percentile. Nate George has been serviceable from three-point range. So they've been hitting shots. It's just not the guys that you think. And once Nate Kings gets it going, I think, that 29% is going to get boosted.
The last year, the two guys they needed to hit threes couldn't.
Yeah.
And we kept saying it's going to happen, and it never happened.
That's true.
Hopefully it won't be the same this year.
Yes.
You know what's not on the court, Steve?
What's that?
For the basketball team? A multi-platinum rapper.
That is true. Tusi signed with Syracuse, or has committed to Syracuse. I guess technically he can't sign until tomorrow is when the early signing period opens. But he went on social media yesterday and announced that he's coming to Syracuse to play football. And again, if you haven't heard the story, he's 25 years old. He turns 26 next month. Was born in Syracuse, grew up here until he moved to North Carolina around the age of 12 or 13. Played wide receiver down there in high school, was a kick returner. And then never went to college and pursued a musical career. He's a multi-platinum artist. And now he's, all this time later, he's going to come back to school and play football for Syracuse. And you're not a huge fan, I guess, of the timing, right?
Yeah.
You don't love when the announcement was made.
I would have liked spacing it out a little bit. If I was in charge, I would have said, hey, we're happy you're coming. Let's push it off a week. Let us make the coaching changes. Let us acknowledge the fact that this season was unacceptable. And then we'll announce a multi-platinum rapper. I have no issue with him signing here. It's just, I didn't think it was great PR.
And again, I would say my rebuttal to that would be the signing period literally opens tomorrow, and the kid is the one that posted it. And, Fran Brown hasn't talked about it, and he can't talk about it until it becomes official. So
could have been said not to.
Just don't do it.
Yeah, we'll just hold off.
Anyway, it's happening. He's, one of 105 players on the roster. And I do think that there can be some positives from this, and we touched on it on the show about NIL and recruiting and so on and so forth, that, it doesn't hurt, right? Yes. I don't know if he's going to see the field or how much he's going to play.
If there's a kid out there that likes this guy as a rapper, you got a chance of getting him. That's awesome. Might
be his teammate, right? So that is cool. So it is happening. Again, signing day tomorrow. We'll keep our eye on all the various signings. Calvin Russell is a name that everybody's excited about, the 5-star wide receiver from down in Miami. And, all signs point to he's a firm commitment that he's going to sign. And, it seems like a healthy class of more than 24 student athletes set to sign on the dotted line.
One other big change, Steve, that'll be different from the past 2 years of the Fran Brown era is the defensive coordinator, Elijah Robinson, won't be making the calls anymore from up in the booth.
That's right. He will still coach the defensive line, which he's been doing since he's been here, but he will be considered the co-defensive coordinator next year, meaning he will report to the defensive coordinator, the university currently searching for his replacement. So he won't be making the calls on defense. Will still be heavily involved, of course, on that side of the ball. Just won't be the man in charge of that defensive unit. That was announced today. With that in mind, Paulie.
Steve, did you know that before the Super Friends, Batman and Robin appeared in cartoons, but they weren't the Super Friends? Do you know which cartoon they crossed over into prior to being on Super Friends?
Batman and Robin?
It's a pretty easy guess.
Is it Scooby-Doo?
It is the Scooby-Doo movies. You're good at this. I think
I like Scooby-Doo.
Costello did it.
Yep.
Batman and Robin.
Don
Knotts, yes.
Yep. Harlem Globetrotters.
Yes. It used to drive me nuts when the Harlem Globetrotters would get on Gilligan's Island and then get off the island.
Right,
and
they got off, but
everybody else got stuck.
Favorite Scooby-Doo episode of all those? Which one is the
Harlem Globetrotters,
me too.
a doubt.
Me too, yes. Remember they were falling asleep and then they had to put the ice in their shorts so they woke up and came back and won the game, as a matter of fact. I love Scooby-Doo. I can talk about Scooby-Doo all day. We don't have time to talk Scooby-Doo all day.
I don't want to talk
We've got a game to cover
tonight.
tonight. Syracuse, Tennessee, inside the Dome, 7 o'clock start. For Paulie, I'm Steve. Thanks for listening. Thanks for watching. Enjoy the game tonight. We'll talk to you again tomorrow.
Join News Channel 9 for A Christmas Wish and help us support the rescue mission. A movie with a mission this Sunday at noon on News Channel 9 and WSYR Plus.